joined by another Jitsu Jew and a Jewish brother, Natan Levy. So, firstly, Natan, Erev Tov, and how are you going this morning? Sorry, this afternoon for you.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, anytime. So, look, first question I wanted to ask you before we really get into mixed martial arts and your fighting career is just quickly to kind of touch on Ukraine. So, you're obviously a proud Jewish fighter yourself. And when you look at the Ukrainian situation with a Jewish president in Zelensky, do his actions in the current conflict kind of make you proud to be a Jew, to kind of see another Jew standing up for people and fighting against this sort of oppression?
Sure it does, but there are people doing good and people doing bad. Some of them are Jewish, some of them are not. So, of course, I'm happy to be well represented by this specific leader, but it's not the pinpoint thing that I'm looking at. I'm more looking at like he's a good leader and he's not letting he didn't flee the country. So for me, I think that's a good thing.
Natan, obviously, your journey didn't begin in the US. It began abroad. So, how did your martial arts journey sort of start and originate? And what was it like in terms of transitioning from France and everything else to moving to the US?
For me, it started in Israel, doing karate and kung fu growing up. I always loved martial arts, so it was never something that I started training seriously at 15, but I was always into it. And at some point in my life, I was already teaching. I had already got my black belt in Japan, and I just had like this desire to compete and try myself out in MMA. So I went for it. I knew I was 22, so it was now or never, and I went for it.
Yeah, and you just talked about it there that you have a background in the traditional martial arts, like karate and kung fu. And one thing I wanted to ask you is that a lot of casuals look at the traditional martial arts and they go, well, that's not going to work in MMA. It's not going to work in the cage. But when you look at the traditional martial arts that you've trained in, what aspects or what parts of those traditional martial arts are you able to bring in to your MMA training or bring into the cage?
So, you got a point. A lot of things that we see as traditional, first of all, they're not that traditional. They're not that old. It's not most, martial arts we practice today have not been around for thousands of years, maybe more like 100 years. And they were all founded on, on the idea to be, at the time, as applicable as possible and take what's useful from other arts and disregard what's not useful. And at some point, we put the traditional sticker on them and they can't be touched. But the whole point from the top was to be effective. So now we have the internet, we can see what works, not only through our experience, but through other people who got into fights, who filmed and different stuff. So I think for me, I still do those martial arts, but just with that point of view that I'm doing what's useful. And if there's a technique in which I need to, grab somebody's collarbone and rip it out, then no, I'm not going to drill it. It's not useful.
Yeah.
Natan, obviously, you compete in one of the most, I believe, talent-heavy divisions in the UFC. Being lightweight, it's completely stacked from top to bottom, especially in the top 15. When you look at the landscape, more so of the top 15, what are some fights with some talented fighters in that division that really motivate you and that you'd look forward to having one day?
There's a lot of names. Like you said, it's a really stacked division. For me, every fight is like exciting. Every fight, like you said, it's a lot of talent. There's no easy fight, so every fight is a puzzle to solve. And for me and my coaches, whether it be in preparation to get ready for the fight, and whether it be inside the cage, you got to make adjustments. Things suddenly are not as they seemed from the outside, and you got to make those adjustments on the fly. So every fight excites me, and I'm looking forward to climb up the ladder until I get that top 15 and forward.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, that's part of your journey coming up end of next month, April 30th. Your fight against Mike Breeden. How do you see that fight kind of playing out, and what's your sort of prediction on that fight?
Um, can't really say what I think is gonna happen because I got my plans,
Mm.
but I think it's gonna be a great fight for the audience. Me and him, I can't see it being boring.
Mm.
And I definitely see myself with my hand raised at the end of this fight. Um, so I'm looking forward to it.
Mm.
Mm. So to kind of switch space a little bit, I read an interview with you from ESPN the other day where you kind of talked about discovering martial arts early on and how it was really good for you because you felt you weren't really the sort of person to just fit in and do really well with school. So how significant was it discovering martial arts and discovering this almost way of learning that really worked for you? How significant was it for your development?
It was very significant because for me, naturally, I was never good at anything really. So martial arts is like the first thing that I was actually good at and got people to appreciate me for my skill in it, to for me to appreciate myself. And I think once you reach mastery in one field, then you kind of realize what's the blueprint, and how you can achieve mastery in other fields. Um, so it makes you, kind of see the potential you have and what you can do, and that made me feel like I can go and train in Japan and get my black belt. I can go to Las Vegas and be an MMA fighter, and I can make it to the UFC. Um, and same thing, I know that if tomorrow I decide that I wanted to be a doctor, I can do it. If I want to be anything else, I can do it because I know what's it like to work hard,
Mm.
be dedicated, be single-minded, and all those tools that you use to get good at something.
Yeah. This year, sorry. Obviously we've had the last 2 years have been pretty tough with COVID and restrictions and people trying to get fights, especially here in Australia. It's been very tough to see fighters trying to get over, and New Zealand as well. Has that been pretty frustrating for you in the last 2 years? And are you looking to be more active this year as sort of things roll back around and come back to normal?
Yeah, for me, I think the most frustrating part was that 22 really big chunk of time when everything was closed,
Yeah.
and there were no fights. That's one point where I haven't fought in like a year and 3 months. In my prime years, not fighting for so long, that's kind of wasted time. But on the other hand, I was training hard as hell every day. Even when the gyms were closed, everything was closed. I would train in the park. I would train at home. I would do, fitness training, flexibility. I would do skill training.
Mhm.
So I knew that there would be an opportunity in all this chaos to get a shot. And yeah, I did fight. I think it was July of 2020 after a
Mhm.
long, over a year break. And then 2 months later, I got my contenders fight, and I was ready for it. I won it. This and that previous fight, just thanks to me being committed to the sport, even in a hard time, I kept training.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and just as a bit of a side question, is that sort of mentality of constantly looking to improve and constantly finding ways to get better, even when maybe you can't go to the gym or you can't compete, is that sort of mindset really important for you to keep as a martial artist? Is to just constantly try to find ways to get better?
I think so. I think that's what drives me. And like you say, a martial artist, some people don't see themselves that way. Some people see themselves more as like athletes or more as like fighters, prize fighters.
Mm.
So some people will win a fight, and as long as they don't see a fight anytime soon, they will gain weight. They will not go to the gym. They will go on long breaks, on benders, um, all that stuff. And for me, every day out of the gym is wasted time, whether I want to fight, lost a fight, if I haven't fought. So it doesn't matter. I need to be in the gym improving. That's what I love to do,
Mm.
and it pushes me forward in my career.
Mm. So, your approach to martial arts and your attitude and your work ethic is obviously shining through. It's very evident. So how important is it as a fighter and as a person to be a role model for younger people that were maybe in your position where they weren't they weren't really sure of what they were good at, or they weren't sure of what they wanted to do, or they felt that school wasn't really for them. So how important is it as a fighter and as a martial artist and as a person to be a role model for maybe people that were like you?
It's a good thing. I think I try and be the best role model that I can be.
Mm,
But and there are a lot of people, I want to inspire them that if some, the rest of things that are expected of you, it don't match with what you want to do. Yes, you can be a fighter. Yes, you can be a martial artist and
mm,
teach and do many things along that line. You don't have to be like a part of the mold. But on the other hand, I don't want to try and inspire people who could be, maybe better
yeah.
things to be
Mm.
fighters. Like you don't have to be a fighter.
Mm,
Sometimes people will approach me or text me that they're thinking about being a fighter. Maybe they kind of want to do it, and I tell them it's probably better they don't do it.
mm,
First of all, for their health, for their finance, for their mental well-being. It's not easy being a fighter,
mm,
but also if you're hesitating, it's not for you. You gotta
mm,
go and do it only if it's a burning passion that you have
mm,
and you know you can't live without doing it.
mm.
Because if you don't have that, you're gonna quit real fast, and it's gonna be a big waste of time.
Yeah, and that is something an older coach of mine actually once said, which is if you're thinking about being a fighter, don't be a fighter. It should be something you know you want to do. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today. You've been very gracious with your time. We really appreciate it. Very much looking forward to seeing you fight on the 30th of April, and all the best, my friend.
Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it, and talk again soon.
Thank
Easy.
you, brother.
Thank you.